Hello, hello. So last week, uh, last Thursday, I think, yes, was St. Patrick's Day, and I think most of us know that it's St. Patrick's Day. It's that time of year when most of the rest of the world is more Irish than us, but we continue. So I thought, now's my chance. Let's do a little blind tasting, and it is just a blind tasting. Saying as it seems to be Irish month, and uh, and we'll get a couple of guys in, a couple of trusted palates, shall we say, and test them a bit and just see what we get. I've fired a few interesting triple distilled single malts at them. So we will come back in a moment and continue to see what they have made of it, shall we? Yes, it is. It's an Irish month. Now, what I want to do here before we continue, if you will indulge me, I'm going to start in a slightly more somber note for this live stream. Now, about a week and a half ago, probably my oldest friend, or one of my oldest friends, lost his father after a short battle with cancer. Now, it's a sad truth, an unfortunate truth, that we all lose people, we all lose someone in our lives. But the reason why I wanted to talk about this guy was that he was a legend to me. I've known him, I knew him 40 years probably plus, and it was him indeed where I first heard the words "Here's to your good health" as a young man, and he would have raised a glass, and never would he raised a glass without saying "Here's to your good health." I could never bump into him, I could never see him without coming away with a smile on my face. He was just one of those characters, and I just wanted to mention him here tonight. And I'm actually going to what I will do is I'm going to share this and try and share this without there. This should be there. He is, and I've managed to keep Roy on there as well. Hold the bus. Anyway, this is the man here, not this man. This man. This is human, and this basically sums him up. This was taken a few weeks ago, and that's him. He was a character, and I just wanted to say, just while I was here, to Hugh Montgomery, cheers, and it was a pleasure to know you. So if you don't mind raising a glass with me, if you have one in your hand, to Hugh. Now, that is done. What I want to do now is, obviously, what I usually do is go into the chat and see who we've got, because it's good to speak to people in here. It was good to see people early on. The lights were flashing up, so it was good to see folk in. Ben in early doors, good to see Whiskey with Molly. Ben, if I'm not speaking to you before it, Ben, here's to you and starting your new job this day week. So all the best for that, Ben. Whiskey Works Graham, my friend, good to see you, buddy. Drew from AZ. Is that KNUR connoisseur? Knur connoisseur? A new name to me, anyway, I believe. So good to see you. And Hell's Wed, always good to see you. Let's see, scrolling, because it's the same name. Donner Past Tim, good to see you, my friend. Connor Smith, Whiskey Straight Al, good to see you. Whiskey Tim Hoekstra, I think that's another new name to me. Menno's N, good to see you, Menno. Neil Laverty. Oh, it's great to see the names in as usual, and it seems like the normal names, but it's good to see those folk. Jimmy Jazz, how are you, Jimmy? Let's see, Jerry Miller, I think that's another new name for me. Is there in the night? Bud Jenkins, how are you, Bud? Jeff Whiskey, Greg's Whiskey Guide, how are you, my friend? Let's see, Jason Bradford. Jason, good to see you. Still scrolling. Andy Cross, and I'm sure there'll be others. I'm sure there will be others. Now, as I said, Irish month. People call it an Irish. I keep hearing it being called an Irish month. It's just March to me, really, in fairness. But you know, it is special to some people, so I wouldn't take that away from it. It was always seen as I was growing up as a good opportunity to really go out and get pissed. But why not? And I think actually this year, because the last 2 years have been so slow and you weren't really allowed out, you know, we basically weren't allowed out to enjoy ourselves. Things like St. Patrick's Day fell away, and obviously they fell very quiet. So I think this year then it was an opportunity for people to get out again for the first time. So why not go out and enjoy it? A few new names coming in there. David Owen come in, Stefan Novak come in, Adam Simon. If I'm pronouncing that wrong, Adam, I apologize. Kevin Grant on Whisky. Kevin, good to see you. So yes, names coming in there. It's good to see them. So my guests are waiting patiently here. At least one of these guests is going to need a break at the end of this week. I know for a fact, because he's had a busy session this week. What with one thing and another, and probably had I known he was going to do a blind session of new mixed spirits with the Doc McCallum Fenrir, who is about Scotland summer as we speak, I probably would have postponed this again and maybe done it another time. But he was keen to come and do it, so I was very pleased, and I'd be interested to know what they make of these whiskies, because I thought it would sort of turn it around a bit. And as I say, we've got 6 whiskies on the go here, all blind, all triple distilled single malt in this Irish month. So it will be interesting to see what they think. Yes, Adam Simon is the same as Simon in Polish. Thank you, Adam. I apologize. Bill Monteith and Eric Waite is in. So the name's still coming in. Great to see you, folks. If we're all ready, then are we ready, chaps? Can I have a thumbs up? And if we're ready, then I shall introduce my 2 guests. And I think we'll just pull everybody out at once here. We all know each other now. So we have Roy. I said I'll pull everybody. You know, Andy, I missed. Oh, you know what I did? Because you left Andy and come back, you didn't. That's what happened. I don't think I'll introduce you anyway. But I mean, I would dare say everybody that's here knows you. Andy at Maltbox. If you don't know Andy, just for dear sake, go and watch his reviews on YouTube. I said in the build up to this that I wanted 2 trusted palates from 2 trusted YouTubers, and Andy was one of the first people I thought of. And then, of course, Roy Aquaviti.
How are you doing, Jim? Good to see you, buddy.
Very well. Good to see you too, my friend. Guys, you're keeping well, yes?
Oh, good. Thanks, mate. Yourself?
Yes. All up for it. Tomorrow booked off and everything.
Looking forward to this as well. It's nice to be on, well, it's not always comfortable, but it's nice to be on this side of it. I'm usually hosting these things. So it's nice to be... would this be some of my own medicine tonight, Jim, maybe?
Well, it wasn't really. It was more one of those things that, as I said to Andy when he came in, just before you joined us, Roy, that I both of you guys, I like sharing time in your company. And it's just, I seem to have spent an awful lot of time sharing company with Andy on your YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And I feel like as if Andy and I are generally in the same place, which is somewhere in the panic zone.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate, yeah.
So I thought it would be nice to be in the driving seat tonight. And Andy, basically what happens next is you're hosting then. That's
there we go, yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. Let's do it.
Yeah, I'm always up for it, but I think what normally happens with these things is that we're comfortable and we feel quite good. We've made our notes on the first pass. We've decided what we like, we don't like, things like that. And then as the reveal starts to happen, all the wheels start to wobble and fall off, and that's when the panic strikes, right?
Yeah,
This is the thing.
But I think it's quite interesting how comfortable everybody's become over the last 2 or 3 years with just quite happily sipping blind online, live on camera. And I think it's healthy to do that because it encourages other people that not only it's fun to do it blind, but also there's no pressure on them to. You don't need to be able to tell what whiskey's from what. It's just it's different ways to enjoy whiskey. That's what it's all about.
I would dare say there has been more than one whiskey has gone from being a bit of a failure to being championed based on blinds that people sort of counted them out, and then
Loch Lomond's, Tomatin
Yep.
Legacies. There's been a few over the years that have just Glasshouse as well, that have just continually stunned people in blinds, where our preconception or what we weren't expecting much from the glass when we knew what it was, but when we had it blind, it really took us by surprise. I wonder if you've got anything like that in front of us tonight, Jim. That would be a nice surprise.
well, we will see. I want to briefly pop back into the chat and say Lee J come in, and the doc is in the chat, so he's on holiday but still here. So thank you for joining us, and Lee J as well. So listen, guys, if you're ready, would you like to give me Andy? We'll maybe start with you. Would you like to just give me your thoughts and maybe an order in which you have.
Yeah. I think there were a few standouts for me, to be honest, that straight away I really resonated with. And I think in a blind, sometimes you kind of find yourself second guessing, but there were a couple that were pretty clear cut and made it to the top for me. One of those being yellow. So yellow for me was right up there. That's probably my favourite.
I actually have, what I've done to myself here purposely is, although I know what the whiskies are, I have a mat in front of me, but I haven't written I've just literally coloured dots on them. So I can't remember what the order is myself. But when the reveal comes later, obviously I will. But I'm just going to be jotting down what you're thinking as we go along. So yellow was a standout for you immediately.
Yeah. And I'll be honest, I'm going to sound ridiculous here, but I mean, I've gone back to it tonight. Initially, I thought it was Bimber Recharge because it had a really kind of resonating, similar profile in the sense there was a lot of kind of like cola cubey, spiciness, bit of toffee in there. And at one point, I've actually written down, and naturally I've thrown it away now, so I don't embarrass myself. But I wondered if green was a watered down Bimber that you'd added a few teaspoons of water to. But now I've gone back to them tonight, no chance, absolutely no way. But there were a couple that I just couldn't put my finger on, like red. It was very light, sort of icing sugary on the nose. You got some like marshmallows, some lemon shortbread kind of thing going on. Then Play-Doh, like a salty homemade plasticine kind of Play-Doh. But the finish is really, it kind of gets a bit grapey. You know, kind of red grape, green grape kind of thing. After a while, some honey, oats. So I thought initially it was a refill, sort of Strathmill or Manic Moor, because that's what it reminded me of. But now I'm sort of second guessing myself, because it is, after all, Irish month, as you said yourself, Jim.
I did.
And they are firmly not in Ireland, are they? Just a little gap between Speyside and Ireland.
Weirdly, I mean, an awful lot of this is still the red you're talking about here, yes?
That's the red, yeah.
I would actually agree with an awful lot of what you're saying there.
That's all right. Let's close the stream down. We're done. Nice one. Job done.
Well, a lot of what you're saying, maybe not all of it. Sorry, before we go any further, I just got an addition to the whiskey, or the bottle purchasing from Whiskey Works, Graham. So cheers, Graham. Very much appreciated, buddy. Yes, sorry, Andy, you were saying.
No, it's all right, mate. So I feel like I'm waffling on. So I think in terms of, do you want my order now, or do you want them?
Well, why not? Because I mean, at the end of the day, it is a school night. It is Monday night.
Well, unless it would be better to go favorite, because I'm going to listen to you and change my mind.
That's not a bad idea. So, Andy, if you give me your favorite first, and
yes,
then we'll go for Roy for his favorite.
Yeah, mine's definitely yellow. My favorite's definitely yellow. It's got a lovely colour to it as well. The more I look at it down here in the light, it's almost like a pinkish, sort of like maybe sauterny kind of hue. It's really nice. Or Madeira.
Yeah. So, Roy.
Yeah, For me, I think there's three that are clearly enjoyable things that I would really like to know what they are and probably keep them. And there are three that are like either poor or, let's say, mediocre. So I'll go with a pink is my favorite by a nudge. I think it's the most refined. It's potentially tastes to me like it's the most mature. It's rich and fruity. I like pink. My number two is blue, and the more I sip the blue, the more I'm enjoying it because it's lovely. I've got approval from Andy here. It's light. It's lovely spice to it. It's got nice body. It's got nice weight. Lots of engagement there. If you go from something soft that really pops, it's quite vibrant. So I'd say number two. So yeah, number one pink for me, and number two blue.
Okay. No, blue. Well, I'll give you my views after. But yeah, Andy, you're number two, buddy.
That's blue as well for me.
Really?
Nice.
Yeah.
There you are. And what stood out for the blue for you, Andy?
I think quite a few things that Roy touched on. I'd probably say as well. Like initially, I think for me, it had good texture, not only on the palate but on the nose as well. It smelled very, very inviting, but also still quite maybe challenging. It took a little bit more to maybe unlock some of the stuff off the nose for me. It's quite intense after a little while as well, particularly on the palate. Just a really nice kind of mix of flavors, really up my street. Very, very varied from your sort of traditional sweet vanillas, toffees, all the way through to on the palate towards the end. I got some like green tea. It was also slightly meaty as well, maybe. It's a really nice varied mix. Really, really engaging.
Yeah, I would agree with the meatiness, definitely.
Yeah, I would definitely a wee bit of savoury in blue. A wee bit.
So do you want to give me your number three then, Andy?
Yeah, I went purple for three, but it was a tie between purple and pink, but I think purple just edged it for me.
Purple, yes. As I say, I'm not blind because I know what they are, but I just can't remember what order they're in. So it's sort of interesting for me too, but weirdly, well, I'm sort of meeting in places and in other places already. We're not falling out, but I wouldn't necessarily agree. So, Roy, do you want to give me your number three then?
Yeah, I mean, I think 1, 2, and 3. I'd even go as far to say that I could maybe have just a stab at just going for glory and try and snipe what I think they might be. Of course, knowing full well that I'll end up with a face covered in egg, but that's okay. That's what half of this is about, right? Because occasionally when it does come off, you feel fantastic. So it's worth at least trying, right? It's not going to happen. For me, the yellow, Andy's favourite is my number three. And for me, it's all to do with the fermentation in this. It's all estery. It's really ripe, really heavy estery fruits in the middle, lots of dough and pastry. It's really quite rich. It's probably going to be challenging against some of the other whiskies here because of a lot of that. But for me, yellow is number three. I think it's a dingle. It tastes a lot like a dingle to me. I think that kind of estery forward profile that dingle has can challenge most of the casks that you put it in. And as Andy's already picked out, there's some really red magenta highlights in this glass. And there is a wee bit of dry tannin. If you sit with it for a while, you're going to get a black tea note and some red fruit and things, which suggests a wine cask or maybe a port cask. And if I remember well, on Thursday night when you were on my stream, you had a dingle, and I think it was a port cask dingle, and that fits perfectly with this. The pink one, I think there's a chance that the pink one could be, it's very reminiscent to me of a yellow spot 12-year-old. Really rich, really mellow, totally integrated, hanging together lovely. I miss my yellow spot. I'm not going to replace it at 70 odd pounds, but
I will say one thing. None of these are single pot still.
Interesting. Okay. So that's everything else that I'm going to guess then is wrong too.
Well, I did say they were all triple distilled single malts. So
well, I heard you say they were all triple distilled. I didn't hear you say that they were all malts. But that's what's reminiscent to me. I think this is probably the most balanced out of them all, the pink one. And the blue one, I'm wrong as well. That's that spice, that weight, that extra body, you know what I'm going to guess this blue would be, and it clearly can't be, right? I thought it could be the Powers John's Lane, which is single pot still Irish as well.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go.
Although I can see, actually, I can see why, going back to it, I can see why you thought that. But obviously it's not. You know.
See, that's really interesting, because I'd actually written down Powers 12 for the pink rather than the blue.
Ah, interesting. So we both thought there was something in that enough for us to convince that it was single pot still, right?
Yeah. It's got all those sort of spicy notes, you know what I mean? There's in every single one of them, there's some sort of spicy undertone I found, maybe apart from red.
That's right. You thought the red was a bit thin.
Yeah, I think it's probably on the lighter side, but it grew on me on the palate. It kind of it took a lot of kind of enticing out of the glass red for me on the nose. But
I think I remember now what red is, and it does take a long time to open up. I found it took a long time to open up. It's interesting. Once again, I said it at the start, because they're all, as much as I would have, we all have our favourites, we all have those that we like and those that we don't like, but I still think they're all interesting in their own way.
Yeah.
Be they good or bad. So where were we? Who had the last call? You, Roy?
Yeah, so my number 4 then you need now,
number
yeah?
4, yes.
Purple for me.
Okay.
So not far away from Andy. He's got his number 3.
And what was it about the purple then?
The purple for me was, these are all malts. You're sure there aren't any blends here, right?
They're all single malt.
Right. It's interesting because there are 2 for me that I could easily convince myself that there's grain in there. So, but clearly there aren't. If there isn't, if it's all single malts, and that's the purple and the red. Red is there's almost like a rye element to the red one, and I put that at number 5, by the way, just for.
That's right.
There is a kind of light, gentle spice, and I sometimes will get that from a grain. And also, I think that purple and red for me, 4 and 5, are both a little bit more simple, maybe even lower ABV, and they don't have the body and the depth. I mean, as they're sitting here opening up, they are getting better, like they always do. But yeah, these were number 4 and 5, purple and red for me.
No bother. So, not very good and well broken down. So, Andy, you're 4 and 5 then, and 6 then, if we'll go that far.
Yeah. So, pink was 4 for me.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like I mentioned before, it was sort of tied with purple, but I think purple edged it for 3. So, pink's 4.
Mm-hmm.
Red 5.
Mm-hmm. You said grapey and thin.
Yeah, but it kind of grew on me. It did, and it's probably not Strathmill or Markham, obviously, but it did remind me of those kind of like honeyed oats, and you know, I find Strathmill does sometimes have that kind of oily grapiness afterwards as well sometimes. So I like the spirit style. It's just, I think, compared to some of the others, a bit like Roy said, to me, this is maybe a little bit lower ABV, not quite as full-bodied, well-rounded, but it still edged it to green, which is my number 6.
Which that leaves 6 for green on both.
Yep.
Yeah, it does. I'm not getting on with 6 at all.
No.
6 is the most. The arrival, everything is okay. I was a wee bit suspicious on the nose, but I went with it. The arrival and everything's in balance. It's quite soft and easy. It starts off quite fruity. Immediately, this bitter, almost slightly acrid thing starts to happen, and the sweetness goes all kind of burnt sugars. I think, and it's not just about the colour that's in the glass. The colour, the texture to me, and those notes smack of a heavy coloured whiskey to me. Not sure that colour's been used in any of these, Jim, obviously, but that's that in order for me to articulate what I'm tasting. That's what it's like. And from the get-go, green was always going to be number 6, and it's not come any better.
It's got a hint of emulsion paint off it for me now, but not the good part of emulsion paint.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you mean now you said it, though. It's like a pot of paint that needs stirring up. It's been sat for ages, and all the oils and stuff have come to the top of it. It's been sat in the garage for too many years. I think I'd probably for me, Roy, like I cannot fault anything you just said. You absolutely nailed it. I think for me, the thing that stood out for it as well is that initial pleasant flavour just completely. I did that when you were talking because it just dropped off, and you're left with what reminds me of the brown sugar that you've overcooked in the pan. If you're trying to make toffee or something, and you sort of like maybe put a bit of treacle in it, it's really dark, very, very heavy, almost like that burnt kind of vibe going on, like treacle toffee or bonfire toffee, really, which I normally like.
You can see you're picking up the exact same things that I did, which would make me think that, you know, if it's had a heavy-handed dose of caramel in here, then and you know, and I think when that does happen, it's widely known that when there's too much caramel or colorant being added to a whiskey, there is an emulsifying effect, and it does flatten out the palate a little bit. And some people quite enjoy that palate character because it's quite smooth, I suppose. But for me, it always leaves that really short finish, that heavy sense of bitterness instead of nice fruity spice or whatever. And it means that this whiskey's, if I don't finish all my whiskies tonight, I guarantee that's the one that's going to be left in the glass. It's just not, and I think it's up against some decent drams as well, which is making it even worse. It's making its job even harder. If I was sitting around a fire with number 6, the green one, and it was the only whiskey on offer, I would just be sitting there happily drinking it, but I wouldn't focus on the whiskey. I'd focus on the company in the moment rather, right? So
absolutely,
well, gents,
not enjoying it.
I've sat, and what I actually have done now is open up for myself to see what was what. Now that you've given me your views, and now just so I know where we're at, because actually while we were doing that, I was sitting along, and I actually changed my mind on 2 of them. Not simply because of there was 2 of them that I had sort of. I was the same as yourselves. I was sort of hemming and hawing about them, but there was 2 that I wasn't sure about, and now I've actually swapped them over. Still not necessarily to either of their benefits, but so what I'm going to do is, as I said, it was a blind tasting, but there's always going to be a bit of a spanner in the works. It has to be, doesn't there?
Sure.
Absolutely, yeah.
Is this when the challenges come out?
I did say that it was Irish month. I did say that they were all triple distilled. I didn't say that they were all Irish. And 2 of them aren't.
Wee bugger.
Let's start with you, Roy. Do you think, could you find the 2 that aren't Irish?
Okay. This is a spanner in the works, right enough, Jim. Never assume, right? What is it they say?
That makes an ass out of you and me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is why I said at the start that they are all interesting. I keep repeating that because I do still think that they are all interesting in their own way, be that way good or bad.
They are very, very varied. That's the thing. There's no peated whiskies in there, is there? But yet they are all incredibly different.
No, there's none. I tried to actually look for ones that I found were relatively close. And I could probably give you another tip or another clue toward the Irish ones, but well, actually, it wouldn't make any difference now. The 4 Irish, I've said that there's 2 of them aren't Irish. The 4 that are Irish are all their own spirit.
No sourced whiskey.
There's no sourced whiskey in this.
Oh, okay.
So that narrows down the choices. While you're thinking about that one, Roy, for a split second, and I never thought about this myself. Bud's asking what my ranking was. I had yellow at number 1, Andy as well. So you and I matched there. I had actually the purple at number 2. And I'm looking at my own notes here to see, yes, what it is. I had the pink, which Roy had at number 1, and Andy had at number 4. I had at number 3. But I know you were toying with that one, Andy. You didn't know. I actually then had the red at number 4. Because I did, as much as it is, like when the red opens up a bit, it's a better whiskey than what it is. You know, but it took an awful long time to open up, I found. But once it did, I quite enjoyed it. And then I swapped them over. Here now, the blue I had last, actually, but I've moved the blue up to 5th and the green in the 6th, the same as yourselves, because after sitting with them all, one after the other, you're 100% right. The green is just flaccid compared to the rest of them. There's little going on, and what is going on isn't great.
Yeah.
So Roy, which would you throw a dart at if you were trying to guess which two are not Irish?
You've flounced me now, because what's actually happening is you have to then suddenly think about what Scotch whiskies are actually triple distilled, rather than the Springbank being a partially tripled, or
not necessarily Scotch now.
Aye, of course, but that's what you've got me thinking, and you've got me going kind of, wait, what other triple distilled whiskies then? And if you go outside of Scotch and Irish, I think the profiles start to change quite dramatically.
Yeah.
There's a difference between Scotch and Irish, but there's a huge overlap as well at times. And but once you go to other triple distilled spirits from elsewhere, things start to really get quite contrasty. So I'm immediately in the land of Scotland for anything else, and I would be struggling to think much outside of that. And if you were to ask me what is potentially non-Irish here, maybe blue and red, but I'm stuck beyond more than that. You've really caught us out with that one, or caught me out with that one. Yeah.
Well, I hadn't actually, I hadn't really intended doing it. I sort of thought it would be a bit of a challenge then, to sort of, because
no, that's the point of it. Absolutely.
You're already the thing is, you're already out of your comfort zone a bit, that you're an Irish whiskey, but then to sort of say, well, hold on, they're not necessarily all. So it's sort of, I know it's asking a bit much, but I just thought it'd be a bit of crack, as they say.
Good fun, mate.
Andy, what do you think?
I mean, I'll be honest, Jim. It's a real struggle. I think when I've gone back to green, that whole triple distilled thing's got in my head. And like Roy's sort of said, it's very, very difficult to kind of whittle down once you get out of Scotland where it could possibly be. So then you go back to Scotland, and then you're like, right, well, that's pretty much, Auchentoshan is one of the obvious ones. And part of me is drawn to the potential of green being Auchentoshan 3-wood or something, but I don't, to be honest, Auchentoshan's not really a distillery that I've had a lot of since they stopped the Old Valanche series. So I don't really know too much about what you could see as their core or standard range as such, but there might be a few crossovers in terms of the notes that I put down for green that I've had in other Auchentoshans, I guess. I have said it's very woody.
I'd be surprised if there was an Auchentoshan here, if I'm honest, but
yeah, no, you're probably right.
I'm up for hearing that. Ben Romack do triple distilled, of course. Hazelburn's triple distilled.
Yeah.
Sorry? Caninvie, yeah. Well, if you bring me triple distilled Caninvie, I'll say thank you very much. It'll be the first time I've tried it, right?
There's single malt, that one that was released in the blue box, the great big square box things where they did their triple distilled single malt.
Yeah. With the quite plain labelling.
Yeah.
Almost like an experimental release.
And it looks like a quarter ball or a half ball.
Yeah.
Yeah, 50 sales, weren't they? Nice little releases, that was before they discontinued, and the blend was brilliant.
They're a good price too.
Absolutely.
So I'll make a note.
I'll be honest, mate. I'm kind of struggling after that. I've gone back to yellow, and now I'm doubting whether that's.
Go with your gut, Andy.
I can't trust my gut, mate. You've seen my outcome on all the Roy's blind challenges. I'm in the conference. I'm in the football conference of blind tastings. I think okay. I'm going to go green. Only probably because it's probably one of my least favourite. The other one, I'm going to just take a bit of a wild stab in the dark and go for purple.
Right. So you're throwing your hats in the ring. I would suggest that, You've done well, I would say. And that, to me, well, to say you've done well, it's one of those things again, isn't it? It's blind tasting. We're all going to have our own views on it. We're all going to have our own views, but it's weird already that
Are we going to do a semi-blind matchup? Are you going to tell us what we have and we've got to try and match it up?
Oh yes, of course. I shall. If you bear with me, I shall.
Andy, I think that might be the only chance we've got of salvation from the way he's phrasing this.
Yeah. I hope you got strong shoulders, mate. 'Cause you're going to be carrying me through this.
I don't think so, buddy.
Let's do it.
You are drinking these. So.
Oh,
That is the Dingle Port, isn't it?
So. Now you know what you're drinking anyway.
Auchentoshan 12.
Oh, I wasn't far off.
English
If it's
triple
the right
distilled.
one.
Jim, what a fantastic lineup. What's the Method of Madness there? A Method of Madness single malt?
It's the single malt.
That is amazing.
It's single malt finished in French limousin oak casks.
Ooh.
I've got to say, Roy, bang on that Dingle. Absolutely bang on.
Well, he doesn't know if he's right yet.
Oh, no, that's...
Yeah, that's
the,
right.
the more I think that, honestly, he's played a blinder with that.
Right, I need to write this down in case you take that slide away, right? So
Yeah.
I've got
No, I leave that slide up there. You can work away at that.
right. So you've got Bushmills 10-year-old malt, right?
Now that is travel exclusive Bushmills. So that's
Is that a 10 that says on it? It's a 10-year-old, yeah.
Yeah, but it's balled at 46% rather than the standard 40, and
Right.
it acts totally different from the standard 10-year-old.
Yeah.
It tastes nothing like it, in my opinion.
Wow. Then Method of
Nice.
Madness.
That's a cool mix, that. I completely forgot the St. George's did triple distilled. Completely forgot.
This was a new one on me, and it was part of the devilish plan that to go hunting down if I was going to have a Scotsman and an Englishman taking part, that I will hunt down an English triple distilled.
Oh,
and
a Scotch and English and Irish.
It wasn't too hard to hunt down a Scottish triple distilled, but it was hard enough to think of one that would fit in with an Irish profile. Then I originally went with Hazelburn, and when I poured myself a dram along the rest, you would have spotted it
A mile
all
away.
day long.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
how does that shake you up?
That's brilliant, mate.
It's
I'm
great.
liking
It's
that.
a great lineup. It's a great contrasting lineup. Very good.
Well done, Jim.
I think the fact that they're all single malt, but they're all quite different. It's proof that still, I mean, I know there's a lot of, we're trying to get back into the blends. Where Irish is concerned, single pot still would definitely be my first choice of what I want when I'm looking for a good Irish whiskey. But there's still some good single malts out there as well.
Absolutely.
So, are there any decisions been made yet?
Yeah, I think I'm nailing my colours to mast again.
Literally, yeah.
Literally, yeah.
Yeah.
I need something. So you said that the Method in Madness is get French Limousin oak, right?
Yeah.
So I need a wee minute, because I think the one I'm looking to that might be that. I'm hoping that there's a bit of spice there, but because literally this is a great thing about blind. Because I'm looking for it, I will find it and convince myself that it's there, right?
So you prepared, Andy?
I'm good to go, mate.
Do you want to lead them, do you? What do you think, Roy? We'll let Andy do it.
Well, I'm pretty committed to and I don't think I'm going to change my mind now. So I'm in. For better or for worse, I'm in too. So
Let's do
no
it.
problem.
That'll do. Right. Well, Andy, you give me one first then. Give me a colour and a...
Right. I'm going to go with blue. I think it's the Teeling.
Okay. Roy?
I agree with Andy. I think the tealing. I think the colour, if you look at the photograph there, but the biggest giveaway when we were talking about that meaty note, when we were talking about the weight to it, we're talking about spice. We're talking about the grip here. The ABV here is potentially what's going to give it away. Is that a typo or is it 64.1?
No, it's 64.1. That's
yeah.
So it's drinkable like that.
So I think that's the strategy, Andy, is that we, by process elimination, I think it's the only one that could be 64.1.
Yeah.
Okay, Andy.
Famous last words.
So I'm going red as English triple distilled.
Okay. Roy?
I agree with Andy. It's there's still a grassy rye spice to this one. It's a different kind of spice. Maybe almost like a little bit of a soft ginger cake. Slightly reminds me of grain whiskey a little bit. Interesting. You guys were talking about it getting better as the night is going on. I think that's probably true. So I'm the exact same as Andy, but now it just looks like I'm copying Andy, which...
Well, I was just about to ask you, Roy, to give me your choice first.
It's like copying the bottom of the class, isn't it? You just need some answers in the test, and you copied off the wrong person.
Well, I'll give you two now as well. Then I'll give you. I'm feeling strongly that yellow is Dingle all day long. From first nose till now, I've not wavered on that. I think yellow is Dingle. The next one's a bit riskier, but I'm just going to go with it. I think that pink could be our Bushmills.
I second that.
Okay, so you're both agreeing on that.
Yeah.
That's okay. Right, Andy, then give me your next one.
I think purple's the Method and Madness, if is that what it's called, yeah? Method and Madness.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you want me to go ahead and say the green one or not, but I think that's the Auchentoshan, only because I said it was the 3-wood originally, so I feel committed to this point.
Fair enough, yeah, I'll give you that.
If that's Auchentoshan, I'm really disappointed. Really disappointed. It's really poor.
Well, Roy, you have only 2 more, your purple and your green. What if you...
I agree with Andy. We're all in absolute agreement. Just by process of elimination between the what's left, purple. Purple has to be our Method and Madness. There might be a little lick of kind of the French limousine thing in there, but it's not obvious. It doesn't lead the whiskey, I don't think. So I think that's the only one that's kind of not sitting well for me, but it must be, or let's say for the rest of them to be right, it must be. And I'm a wee bit surprised if the green is Auchentoshan. It's even worse than I remember, which is a shame for a great distillery. Really, a great distillery.
Well, let's then, shall we, take a look?
Is this the reveal?
6 out of 6, boys.
Banging.
I'm pleased at that, but I'm also really disappointed.
I know. It did. Admittedly, it didn't taste like a lot of the old Auchentoshan that I'd had. I know I mentioned the Valanche.
Yeah.
And they used to be fantastic, and that is a shadow of what they used to be.
Yeah, it's really poor.
What was actually the one, that stood out? Well, there's a couple of stood out. One, Roy, fair play to you. You got Dingle on your first pass, as did you, Andy, with Auchentoshan. So fair play to you boys without even knowing what they were at that point. The other thing was, Roy, I was really pleased that you pulled the Bushmills into your number 1, because I actually said of it, even though I didn't, I put it in 3rd here because just of the competition that was up against. But I said of this, of that Bushmills at the time, that if that was non-chill filtered and there was no colour at it, which didn't even really matter the same, I would probably have just bought more of that and not bought any other whiskey, because I just fell in love with it, because it was still, I still feel there's still something in my heart that says Bushmills is our distillery. We still expect greatness from them, and we're getting some more greatness from them. But this, to me, was just such an improvement on what they had been putting out. Now, yet again, this is just, it's travel exclusive. Why they don't just put this out as their standard 10, I don't know. But
yeah, it's really, I mean, I talked about this, felt like the most integrated, it felt like it was the most mature. And if it wasn't for that Auchentoshan there, I think that would be true. However, I don't usually connect with Bushmills. So it's nice for me to have tried a Bushmills that I think is really nice, to the point that I've picked it over, especially when you look at the middle of the pack there, Dingle and Teeling. Some really quite celebrated new whiskies. I've put it above it. And that was just kind of from a balance and an elegance perspective. And probably also because I suspected it was Yellow Spot at the beginning. But yeah, that's quite an achievement. I think as the night's gone on, it started to wax and wane a little bit. It's it might slide down a wee bit. But I mean, Andy put it in fourth place. You put it in third place. So I think it's washed its face quite well.
It has. And the other thing, I mean, Method and Madness are one, the micro distillery there in Middleton. I've really started to grow to love their stuff. I mean, but it's pricey once again. Now, that being said, and I'll have a sample out to you soon, Roy. I was drinking it the other night, the Ryan Malt.
All right.
It's incredibly interesting. It's something. What I like about them is it's trial and error with them, because Irish whiskey isn't reserved by oak. They can use whatever they want. But they're still not really going daft with that. They're still trying to stick with what works. There's no point in just using any wood that's available. So that's
right. I mean, there's a reason that we're all using oak.
Yeah.
Not just the fact that it's available, but it works very, very well.
Absolutely.
Andy, the English, the triple distilled, when it gets going, I find it actually very likable. I was sorely disappointed the first few times I tried it. Now, I'm not holding you responsible for English whiskey here. That's not what I'm saying. But
to say, post your complaints to Andy in England. P.O. box.
But it just it does take time to get going.
It really does, mate. And what I'd probably say is that I've never tried this expression from St. George's before, and I think they have much stronger releases. Because they seem to do quite a lot of sort of mini releases. They do like very small batch kind of cask finishes. They do a lot of things in 50-litre X red wine quart cask that are out there at the minute. They do, obviously, they've got different types of spirit they produce there as well, because they do make a grain spirit there as well in their stills. They make the Norfolk, I can't remember what it's called now, Norfolk Quencher or something like that. But this is probably one of the softer expressions I've had from them. Normally, it's very upfront, a lot of spice, a lot of vanilla, a lot of green apple. Particularly their 11-year-old blows me away. I love their 11-year-old; it's fantastic. And this is very much a softer, much more approachable side to it. It's still very tasty, but like you say, I think you have to put a lot more work into it to get it out.
I'm actually even taking a bit of a punt there with saying that it's non-chill filtered and no colour at it, because
I think it is a standard there.
I took it. I sort of took it as read. I'd read a few reviews of their other stuff. Everything was coming as non-chill filter, so I just took it for granted that it was. And that colour, if they've added colour to that, it was a waste of time.
Yeah, absolutely.
That Teeling is a distillery pour. That's the one I was talking to you about the other night, Roy, that I didn't like, and I completely panned this when I reviewed it. It was just, to me, it was just rough and not. And I'm starting to hear a lot of people saying that they're struggling with Teeling's own spirit, because this is them now finally starting. They're single grain. It's been their own single grain for a long time. but their single malt is only now in the last probably year and a half starting to hit the market. And it is this thing, Roy and I know discussed it the other night, that it's distilleries trying to pull away, distilleries that were sourcing from their opening, and now they're trying to pull away from that. But some of them are just working with the flavour profile that they had. And so really what you're ending up with is a lot of distilleries that are going to have this base spirit tasting like it's been made in Great Northern Distillery, or Cooley, which always had a very, to me, Cooley spirit always had a very distinctive flavour, a very distinctive profile. So I think they're going to struggle then to cover that with maturation and make themselves differ from the other distilleries that are doing exactly the same thing.
Yeah, I think I wonder if that's just the feeling from the community, or whether that is a genuine attempt, to try and come up with something that's close in the. Because we talked about, it's maybe not that they're trying to follow the flavour profile of the sourced whiskey they've been selling, but they actually tried to source whiskey that would be representative of the flavour profile they wanted to create. So whether or not that they've actually managed to do that or not, we know how fickle whiskey actually is when it comes to it. They can dial it into a certain degree, but the actual nuance and profile of the whiskey, it's almost like it's taking care of itself. So it's going to be interesting to see. I have to say that I came to this teeling blind and not knowing what it was. And it's the teeling that I want to go. It's hot and it's spicy. But the idea there is, if I had more whiskey, I would be tempted to, sacrifice a few drams with water.
Teeling we're sort of on the pig's back. Now, that was the thing, when I had this the other night, last Thursday night with you, Roy, I was at the point of drowning it before it started to work for me.
Yeah.
This is to the point, actually, Frank brought it up there, is this the teeling cleaning liquid from review number 75? And that's what I called it. It's basically cleaning liquid. But teeling were sort of in the pig's back anyway, because they owned Cooley. They were coming from, so it was their own spirit, it was their own cask, etc. They were only setting up with their own again. But so they're not so bad. They're laughing because it was their own spirit that everybody else was trying to taste like. But I do think the rest of them may struggle a bit. Dingle, prime example of what can be done, and I look forward. I think I read that this is the last batch that Dingle are putting out as a batch release. The batch 6 will be the last, and then obviously you must be looking age stated after that, and that's surely, to me, is the only way really that can go forward.
Yeah, they've got the single malt release out there now, haven't they? Like the general release, which is honestly, it's fantastic. Absolutely loved it when I reviewed it. It's lovely stuff. And as soon as Roy mentioned before some of the notes that he was talking about, and I was sort of saying the kind of align with Bimber, I think I might have mentioned it in the review I did, or certainly I wrote it down. I'm kind of kicking myself for not recognizing that kind of crossover. It's that lovely spiciness, loads of sort of toffee, vanilla, absolutely lovely spirit. And just going back to the teeling for a minute, if I can, that's the first teeling owned spirit, aside from the grain, that I've tried. The only other malt that I've had from teeling has been in their previous releases that's been sourced. So it's really, really cool to be able to try that. So thanks for including that point. It's really cool.
Not at all. And it's, sorry, just getting back to that Dingle, I thought it was quite incredible, Roy, that you did pick that out based on, because I said last week that when we were talking, you were drinking the single malt, I was drinking the batch 6, but as you said, a lot of that crossover, it's there. It's in the spirit.
It's definitely there. I mean, but it was immediately on the nose, and then the palate followed it up. I think that there's such a distinct profile or style there coming from Dingle that that there's the DNA between the single malt release, the batch release that I have, and this sample that I have here. It's all in check. If you sit with it for long enough, and depending on what you contrast it with, it will start to taste a wee bit lactic, I think. Some people are put off by that. It doesn't bother me too much, but it's all about fermentation from me. So, similar things in Scotland that would be similar as maybe sometimes Ardnamurchan can be a little bit like that. Certainly Daft Mill. and a few other distilleries that have that really kind of estery, yeasty, Inchmurrin, interestingly, as well, from Loch Lomond. That kind of middle, that mid palate, the development just being full of those really kind of overripe fruits. But it's really quite a densely flavored thing. It's not. Don't confuse it with, we think it's light and ethereal or something. It's quite a dense spirit as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's, as soon as I knows that tonight, I thought, I wonder if he's popped that dingle in here. And indeed he did. It is port cask. That's where we're getting that magenta, right?
Yeah, yeah. And it's quite funny how it seems to be in the standout. I mean, as I say, that's the batch 6, but that seems to be the standout from all the batches that everybody was talking about.
Yeah.
And it's limited. It's quite sad that it is limited release, and it's matured. It says here matured exclusively in port casks, so you're getting full port maturation. Doesn't say how long, obviously, but it ain't old. But I like a port cask maturation. I actually recently made my own little 2-liter mature port cask and put, what did I put in it? Peated something, and even peat and port works together. It brings something new to the play, and it's.
Let's look at the Glen Scotia 14 from a couple of years ago. That was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely fantastic.
And that was the festival release.
Yeah.
I think that you should. I don't know if you have it yet, Jim, but I mean, from my experience, just from Thursday night there, and the one other glass I've poured since of that dingle single malt, if you're enjoying this, go right ahead and enjoy the single malt as well. Obviously, you don't have that same kind of tannic thing that you've got here, that I mentioned about almost like the black tea note on the finish. Maybe some of the red berry fruits or whatever, but you do have everything else that we're enjoying about this dingle tonight is in that single malt. Really interesting how that carries through. I know that some people obviously preferred some batches to others. It was up and down. It was an in and out thing for everyone. But for me, I've only tried 2 bottles and they've both been fantastic. So
no, it's good. And as I say, I just like the fact that it's their own stuff. There's no sourcing there. There never was sourcing there. They're working hard to bring good stuff to the table. And I don't hold it against any of these distilleries that are sourcing. I understand that the funds have to continue to come in, but I just feel that if and when Irish whiskey really wants to make it back onto the scene in a way that, he says trying to.
I think it's there. I think it's there. Well, if you look at it from the perspective of the enthusiast, right, it's there. And if you look at on the perspective of mass market, the fastest growing sector, 70% of the whiskey sold in the North America is Irish. I don't know if that stat is true. It's not American. Obviously, it's not domestic. So all of these things, it's going great guns. But you've got this huge vacuum in the middle there where there isn't a lot of mature stock outside of Middleton, right? Maybe a little pocket of Cooley product and odds and ends here and there. But that's only, how quickly a decade disappears, right? It just vanishes. A decade from now, the landscape of Irish, if those distilleries are permitted to endure, it's going to be a really nice selection. Same for what's happening in England right now, and also Scotland and the new distilleries. I think, we're getting the exact same thing happening in England. We're getting the exact same thing happening in Scotland, where some things like Wireworks is just being gobbled up as gorgeous. Bimber. Cotswolds had a slow start, but it's been widely accepted now. And lots of other really good English distilleries. But there are a few out there that's kind of fallen a wee bit flat and people are still working out what to make of them. So some of them are maybe going to need a bit more time to express themselves. And it's the exact same things happening up here. And it's probably going to be the same over with you in Ireland.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. 100%. Listen, guys, I'm well aware that it's a school night for all of us. And even though I have got the day booked off tomorrow, I've still got plenty enough to keep me busy. So I'm not.
So we're not doing a quiz. There's no quiz. I've got one.
I would be wasting my time tonight because he's just nailed everything anyway. But listen, I can't thank you enough for joining in. He's played an absolute blinder. You really did, and I was glad you proved me right that I could trust your palates and I could trust you to, as much as it was a couple of spanners in the works, etc. You still got one of them each in the pass, and then whenever it actually came to getting them all right, Andy, give yourself a big pat on the back, mate.
Cheers, right?
Because
sounds like we dodged a bullet tonight, Andy. We take it, don't we?
I always feel like as if you and I are under the cosh a little bit. So
I know. I was looking around for Ben to save the day, but he's not here. But no, it's honestly, mate, it's been great fun. Absolutely great fun. Some really nice drums in here, and I'm really impressed by. Personally, I'm impressed by the Teeling and what they've got, and the Dingles just reaffirmed how good that stuff is. Really has. Lovely.
Yeah. No, it is. It's good to see. And to me, as I say, there's Bush Bills. We'll not count Bush Bills out either. The Causeway collection that they started to bring out, although pricey, there was some crackers in it, and it was nice to see them coming back on. Of course, they now have their own grain distillery, so no longer do they need product coming from Middleton. So they're pretty much self-sustaining. So it's good to see, and it'll be interesting to see how it's going forward, because Northern Ireland in its own is springing up in all these craft distilleries at Cologne and whatnot. And it is good to see, and I hope it does continue. I don't think it will ever change my mind. I think personally, for what you can get in Scotch whisky for the same price, I will always, and it's not even about money. I think it's variety in my point of view, or from my point of view, that there's still a better variety for me in Scotch whisky. So that's where I think my heart will lie. And I mean, I think I can speak for a lot of the people here that are in the chat who live in this. We call this, well, it's that Dalriada area that's sort of north coast Northern Ireland and west coast Scotland. So we will always cling on to that bit of Scotland. We're having Kintyre back.
It's I think it's just because I suppose I always assume, Jim, because you speak with an Irish accent, because you live there, from there. I always kind of, when Irish whiskey pops into my head, I think of you, and you're constantly having to remind me that your heart does lie in Scotch whisky. But I think that if you just look at the whiskey as a collective, the future right now is for the drinker. I'm not suggesting it's bright for all of these businesses and new starts and little distilleries. I'm not suggesting it's really bright, going to be continued to be really bright for all the investors out there. But for drinkers like us, the future is very bright. If we just sit back and want to relax with this and spectate and see what happens. I mean, even the whiskies that you've shown us tonight, it's really interesting that all three of us would have put that poor wee Auchentoshan in last place. And it's distilleries like that need to sit up and realise what's on the horizon, because it's nothing to do with the whiskey that's made at Auchentoshan, and it's everything to do with what makes it into a bottle. And that's where it's been mishandled, and it proves it tonight. I don't want to drink the Scotch in the lineup tonight. That's how bad it is. And I have got one bottle of Auchentoshan in my collection, and that's all this has done tonight, is reaffirm why.
Yeah,
it's just not good.
Absolutely.
Bartender's malt is an on-age statement, but it's fantastic. If somebody's looking for a good Auchentoshan, try the Bartenders, batch 2, I think it is. It's really excellent. But this 12-year-old, and age stated, they've matured a whiskey for 12 years old, stripped it, coloured it, put it out there as a price point whiskey, and it's just a red face.
It's killed.
It really is.
It is. It's sad. It was one of the, actually, I would say too, when the Whiskey Novice came about, Auchentoshan 12 was one of the first bottles that I bought. I don't know why. I can't remember why. It's that same bottle is in your glass right now. It's sitting at the back of my cabinet gathering dust, because it just, I can't.
Yeah.
I could never get on with it. and I made the mistake at one point of buying the American Oak, is it? And it's just tooth-rottingly bad.
I'll make a defense for American Oak. If you're going to sit out the back on a summer's day and chuck ice into it and have a fizzy ginger ale or something on top of it, American Oak will do you fine, and you know what you're buying because you've only paid £22 for it, and it's fine.
True.
But this is a 12-year-old. This is a 35 quid whiskey.
It's mad.
It's been abused to the point that it can't even go toe to toe with much younger malt. And this can't continue. I know there's a place for everything. There are good 12-year-old malts out there at 40%. There genuinely are. Look at Glenfiddich. Look at Annock, 12 years old and 40%, and they're really enjoyable still. This isn't. This is sickly, and I don't think any of us are probably going to finish that glass tonight.
No.
So we shame, isn't it? Everything else is really interesting, super interesting.
Absolutely.
I have to ask, has either of you still got any of the English left in your glass, the red one?
Yeah.
To me, it's coming to life now, and it's taken a long time to come to life, but it is starting to come to life.
It's with a wee tiny, just a wee kind of finger drop of water, and it is clouded up a storm as well, so the oils are there and all intact.
So it's good. To me, I don't want to wait around forever for a whiskey to come to life, but I do like the fact that because I've yet to review an English whiskey, and it's not for any reason other than I just haven't got around to it. But I think it's promising. That's the thing. Somebody asked me that question last year. Did I ever see English whiskey overtaking Irish whiskey as being sort of? And I didn't completely laugh it off, and I didn't mean that in any way derivative, but it was just the fact that, look, I think when you look at it in the scheme of there's an establishment, and Irish whiskey had already established itself. English whiskey is going to be the new kid in town for quite a while, I feel. But it's not because they're putting out poor stuff by any means. From what I have had, they know what they're doing. These guys know what they're doing. It's a distillery. It's whiskey distillery. They're not just going into it blindly firing out bottles of stuff in the hope that people will buy it.
No, that's right. I mean, and the scale is very different as well. You can't compare them to the tradition that's down in the consolidated, albeit tradition that's down there in Middleton, right? English whiskey's not going to have that. As you can compare English whiskey to the newer, smaller distilleries. But the lounge tonight, Jim, is going to be full of people who love the lakes and Cotswolds. English Whiskey Company, Bimber, perhaps, when they can get a hold of it. And then tonight we've been able to try something from English Whiskey Company as well that's kind of stood quite well. It's quite clean for English Whiskey Company. I think you touched on that, Andy, right? Mm-hmm. It's bizarrely clean for a whiskey from them.
It's incredibly clean, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And then you look at White Peak and things like that, and you think, oh, okay, this is going to be fun as well. Because if everybody's making good whiskey, nobody's permitted to get away with making shit whiskey anymore.
Yeah.
I think that's apologies for bringing an uncouth tongue to your very clean channel, James.
Here in Ireland too. An Irish month.
Yeah.
Look, listen, guys. Because I did my usual thing. We'll start to wrap it up, and then we'll go off on another rant about something.
That's all good.
Said, it is a school night for all of us. So I can't thank you enough.
Wonderful to have all these familiar faces in as well, joining us too. It's just great. It feels like we're hanging out with pals.
I would like to say that we're here for me and Andy, but you know.
No, they definitely are. They definitely are.
But listen, guys, as I say, it's been an absolute pleasure. You've played a blinder, both of you. And I'm so pleased because I feel like as if I've won something here, because I didn't want you to not get these in the end, you know, so I was glad that you got the opportunity to enjoy them.
I think the only thing we get wrong strictly was that we both only scored 1 out of 2 for the what are not Irish, right? But so we matched each other quite well tonight, Andy. Well done, buddy. Well done.
Yeah,
it's you, mate.
These were definitely pound for pound. That was a heavyweight battle there. So, guys, thank you again. Hang around in the background, and we will have a wee chat before we sign out. Sure, if you don't mind.
Oh, cheers for having us, Jim. Appreciate it, mate.
Cheers, Jim.
Thanks for coming
Cheers.
in, guys. Cheers. Yes, that was an absolute pleasure for me. So it was. I apologize, folks. It's remiss of me. I've done my usual, where I see that if I was to I could keep scrolling up and still miss 90% of who come in. Whiskey Jason was in. Let's see. Marcus Kreitner I missed earlier on. I think Kilco Whiskey Musings. How's it going, buddy? There just so many people come in. I missed you, Daniel Vermaas. I apologize. There was a lot of chat going on. My name, I kept seeing the red flag coming up, and I just, well, you know how it is. We've all been in these live chats before. But look, I had great fun there. I really enjoyed it. It was I can't thank Andy and Roy enough for joining in. It was a success in my books. So I'll just leave it at that and say thank you very much for joining me. It's a pleasure as always, and I hope to see you. Well, yeah, I will say I hope to see you because you never know what's going to happen. But I'll see you in April, shall I? Here's your good health, folks. Cheers.